2, 1. You are live now.
Excellent video, Dr. Bhavti. Excellent.
Thank you so much. I tried for the animated video.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Could have been better.
Okay.
Innovative.
Welcome one and all in this vibrant annual web conference of the two states of Jharkhand and Bihar that is named by us Jhabinsible. Together we are invincible. Truly, WOS, that is the Women Ophthalmologists Society of India, has opened multiple windows of opportunity for women ophthalmologists, professional empowerment, and lot of initiatives everywhere, every year are started under the leadership of dynamic Dr. Mohita Sharma, who is our secretary, and these have proved very helpful. We asked why you people organize your conference separately at the national level and as well as at the state level. So the answer is 50% of our population are women. When we promote women, we are actually promoting 50% of the resources of the society who can contribute for the better growth. Women have unique challenges. As I discussed just now about Anindya, how she is doing fantastic. Because of this, many are not able to come up to their full potential in their profession. They need more opportunities so that they can get back to the mainstream and regain confidence. When they see other women who have similar kind of challenges and they are doing so well despite their challenges, they don't feel isolated and they start emulating them and performing better. So hence we give opportunities to women who have not been presenting or attending much in the conferences. When we do so, they become updated as well as they find their role models and mentors. Under the guidance of Dr. Mohita, there are a lot of programs, mentor-mentee program, the research program, and right now they have initiated the RED program about which she is going to talk. Work needs to be done in many areas to fully neutralize the inappropriate impact of gender on recognition at state level as well as national level. It does not only gives us podium presence and visibility, but actually through this platform, we get united and our voice becomes stronger in our national society, that is AIOS as well. Now I'm going to brief you a little bit about this web conference. We are having 3 sessions. In the first session, Dr. Mohita Sharma, our secretary, WAS, would be enlightening all the women ophthalmologists of Bihar and Jharkhand about the new initiative of WAS, that is the RED, that can be very beneficial for them. Dr. Ranjana Kumar and Dr. Rekha would be moderating session 2, that is the great debate session. And in session 3, we have talk of Dr. Meeta Mohini on Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is a gentle reminder of our social responsibility as doctors as well as intellectuals. Dr. Ranjana is going to brief you how the great debate session will be conducted.
Now we just move on to the debate section. And the debate session, I would just like to brief the details. We have 4 topics where the girls would be debating. Each one gets a time of 5 minutes to speak and then 1 minute for rebuttal. We then go to the panelists and we get their opinion. And if Mohita is around, then she'll be the final judge. I would like to request all the speakers to stick to the timeline and so that we can have an opinion of everyone and we can have an active discussion in the end. Thank you. So we begin with the first speaker, Dr. Bharti Kashyap, who will be speaking. The topic being patient better spend money on premium IOL than on femtocataract surgery. So, Dr. Bharti Kashyap, kindly share your screen. Dr. Rekha would be moderating this session for the first 2 debates. Dr. Rekha, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Timer. Timing set karo. So each one has to present and the time duration is 5 minutes and rebuttal is 2 minutes. You forgot Dr. Ranjana. Rebuttal.
No, I mentioned.
Rebuttal is 2 minutes and then from the team panel. And after that was Bihar and Jharkhand. They will pitch in and after the Dr. Mohita.
You share your screen, Dr. Bharti?
Yes. Doing. So now my time starts. So I'm going to speak on patients better spend money on IOL than on femto laser surgery. So I'm speaking for the premium IOL. So what is the expectation from cataract surgery? The expectation is the independence from glasses. The people don't want to wear glasses, they want to see good. So this is the fact trial in JCRS October 2020. And this shows this is a randomized non-inferiority trial with 1 year outcome. And it compares the femto laser cataract surgery with phacoemulsification. And the 1 year trial, fact trial shows that phacoemulsification is not inferior to flax. Both methods are good for vision and patient-reported health and safety outcome. Flax is not cost-effective at all. Further randomized control trial and meta-analysis are needed. So, but flags are indicated in some special conditions which people claim, like intumescent white cataract, donulopathy, posterior polar cataract. But posterior polar cataract is only in 0.3 to 0.5% people. So, let's come to intumescent white cataract. So, intumescent white cataract, I'm going to show you my video, which this technique I am following since 2017. This is the Dr. Cheese invented technique of capsule milking. And after that, I never got any rhexis extension, and even Dr. Chi invented it. She also did not get any rhexis extension.
Why the capsulorhexis dust still runs out even after we have done decompression? We have a very swollen lens Once we have punctured and found that we have aspirated safely, and we put in more viscoelastic to create a kidney-shaped structure. And then, when we do capsulorhexis, further it tends to run out because of the shape of the lens capsule. We do that, we want to flatten the capsule.
Now we can see the video, ma'am.
Inside, and by doing that, we change the contour of the lens. On flattened surface of lens, we can tear safely. There is no need of making a small rhexis. We can tear it further out without the risk of extension.
And as far as posterior polar cataract is concerned, incidence of PCR is decreased nowadays because of the preoperative evaluation by anterior segment OCT, layer by layer delineation. I'm showing the video which the technique of Dr. Vajpayee, which we follow, the layer by layer delineation, and we don't do hydro, everybody knows, and even without FEM2, we can do this layer by layer delineation of nucleus. I'm just forwarding the video little bit. This is layer by layer delineation. And even if there is a PCR, so you have to do vitrectomy, you have to go for a 3-piece lens. Next. And jonulopathy. Jonulopathy is only in 0.5% of general population suffering from cataract. And what Arcuate keratotomy, this is there for more than a decade. Iska nomogram abhi improve ho hi raha hai. And long-term follow-up indicates superiority of toric IOLs. This is my study which I published in 2017 in ASCRS and ESCRS as well. Toric IOLs and Lancet's arcuate incisions reduce astigmatism, but the correction was significantly less effective in arcuate incision, femtoarcuate I mean, as compared to toric IOLs in longer time period in the astigmatism 1 to 1.25 diopter, I mean mild astigmatism. This is the study, the same study by Dr. Rajiv Chaudhary et al. And spectacle independence, the more is the spectacle independence, the more is the satisfaction, and the less, the more is the spectacle independence, and the more is the satisfaction. This is the analysis, statistical analysis done. And in our hospital, if the patient, we suggest the patients go for the flax with premium IOL if the budget is more than one, and premium IOL, you know, trifocal, toric, ETOF, monofocal plus. And if the flax is in some special conditions, if the budget allows, jonulopathy and very hard cataract, posterior polar cataract, we all know the package of premium trifocal IOL is around 65,000 and package of femto with monofocal IOL is 75,000. But for what? Patient is still using glasses for computer work, seeing, mobile, reading, everything. So extra cost of femto for what? For glasses, it is just like femto laser cataract surgery of 75,000 is just like 5 rupees wala kawa biryani. Now you enjoy, see the video and have fun.
अरे एक प्लेट बिरयानी दो यार।
उधर
अरे बड़ा कमजोर लेग पीस है।
अरे 5 रुपए में क्या हाथी का लेग पीस मिलेगा?
प्रेमलता
क्या हुआ भाई?
दरअसल हम जब भी हिचकी ले रहे हैं,
अच्छा
कौवे का आवाज आ रहा है भाई।
क्या खाए थे?
दरअसल हम 5 रुपए वाला चिकन बिरयानी खाए थे।
भैया वो कौवा बिरयानी है। अब खाइएगा कौवा बिरयानी तो मोहम्मद रफी जैसा आवाज थोड़ा ही आएगा।
कौवा बिरयानी?
So I want to say कि if the budget is less, तो आप ये कौवा बिरयानी टाइप है भाई। अब आप खाइएगा, आप फेमटो कराइए, चश्मा लगाइए। तो मेरा तो यही कहना है। And then I will come back again in the rebuttal.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'll invite Dr. Nimmi to please give her presentation. Dr. Nimmi, please start.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So an excellent presentation by Dr. Bharti ma'am as usual. But today I have a differing opinion. Yes, she has very rightly said, multifocal IOLs have revolutionized cataract surgery into a refractive procedure. But the bottom line remains that the patient selection for these premium IOLs is a tough nut to crack. For example, a hypothetical situation, a patient drives into your clinic in his Audi, flashing the latest iPhone and insists on getting the best and the latest technology. But your bad luck, on examination, the patient has a bad, hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
Go ahead.
I don't know what is this happening. Was I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes.
Proceed.
Okay. And
Proceed.
suppose a wealthy patient of yours insists on getting the best and the latest technology, but your bad luck, on examination, the patient has a bad cornea, a black cataract, a mature intumescent cataract. Here I would like to mention not everybody can be as prolific a surgeon as Bharti ma'am in these critical conditions. Patient with retinal disorders, all somewhat contraindications of multifocal IOL. Then you are left with two options. Cutting a sorry figure, offering him a measly MICS, or be a smart clinician and an even smarter entrepreneur and offer femto laser assisted cataract surgery to the gentleman. And when I say so, it's backed with enough of scientific evidence that femto laser assisted cataract surgery has indeed added accuracy, safety, and precision to all the steps of cataract surgery. Even today in private practice, safety is more important than in complicated procedures. Safety is more important, especially in private practice, and putting fancy IOLs is still secondary. You cannot negate an established technology just because it is costly. So definitely femto laser assisted cataract surgery improves precision and reproducibility. It improves safety, and it also improves refractive outcomes, and especially in premium IOLs. Its precise programmable corneal incisions, accurate capsulorhexis, reduction in power while performing phaco-fragmentation, especially in complicated cataracts, and the possibility of arcuate incision, all these go on to improve the refractive outcome plus the safety and accuracy of a cataract procedure. These are, all these details just go on to prove that femto laser assisted cataract surgery definitely improves the safety, accuracy, and reproducibility of phacoemulsification. These are various research work that has been done and papers that have been published which go on to prove the importance of femto laser. Anterior capsulotomy, as I said, it has improved, and it has improved to the level of perfection with femto laser. And this is very important. All anterior segment surgeons must acknowledge. Similarly, in nuclear fragmentation, femto plays a very important role, especially when we are performing surgery on black cataracts and brown cataracts. And I must say, when we are performing such surgeries, it is important to keep the procedure safe while preserving both the posterior capsule and the corneal endothelium, wherein femto comes in handy. Corneal endothelial cell loss and corneal thickness in conventional as compared with femtosecond laser assisted cataract surgery. This paper shows that obviously femto becomes more handy in such critical conditions. So this is another paper which was published, and it goes on to prove that femtosecond laser was useful in the surgical approach to patients with complex cataracts, especially for the creation of capsulotomy. This is, but Bharti ma'am rightly has said, if the surgeon is very confident, can go along very well even in such situations. But as I said, not everybody can be a prolific surgeon as Bharti ma'am. In these cases, I would prefer to advise patient to go with a femto rather than giving me nightmares after the procedure. Femto-assisted cataract surgery, and there have been made various papers which were published to compare both, and Obviously, in every study, femto has proven to be is at least at par or better in many parameters of cataract surgery. Subluxated cataract, in these cataracts also, again, femto is definitely handy. And when we are talking of complicated procedures, I mean for patients who are ready to pay. This is important. We cannot generalize a statement. We cannot generalize a treatment. It has to be customized. If the patient is normal and wealthy and willing to pay whatever, then maybe these premium IOLs can be advised and it will have a better outcome. It will have a more grade of satisfaction for these patients. But with complicated cataracts, plus a patient willing to pay for the latest technology, femto laser assisted cataract surgery is better. In such cataracts, you perform a very good quality of phaco procedure. You have advised a premium IOL to the patient. I have a doubt what kind of satisfaction the patient will have in the first week post-op, but there is a remarkable difference when femto procedure is performed. This, I agree, that for these they are talking is for to pay, and so if the person is willing to pay, it is important to give him the best. So these are I would prefer to go with femto laser assisted cataract surgery in patients with up the expectation of the patient, because safety profile is more important in a private practice, especially in Bihar, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nimmi. Now I would request Dr. Bharti ma'am for the rebuttal.
भाई जो प्रोलिफिक सर्जन है, सारा प्रोलिफिक सर्जन के पास ही फेमटो है, साधारण पास फेमटो नहीं है. पहला, I am very clear that patient can afford femto and premium IOL, तो बहुत अच्छा है. Otherwise, if it comes out of premium IOL budget कि 75,000 में हम लगा दिए सुप्राफोब, तो वो नहीं. Budget is an issue, and I have to decide one thing. Then I will opt for quality IOL, then quality technology. In 99% of cases, results are same. पुराना study मत दिखाओ, नया study दिखाओ. अभी ACRS में study हुआ है, and that is not funded by any company. एकदम same है. And I am not driven by technology. I use it in less than 1% cases where it is truly needed. And if you go to a fine dining restaurant, वहाँ पे exotic cuisine order करोगे ना, sushi order करोगे, और वहाँ पर जाकर के street side cuisine तो order करोगे नहीं. And if you want to eat a street side cuisine, so you will not go to a fine dining restaurant. Same. And I want to ask Dr. Nimmi that in your 99% cases where the cataract is normal, would you give an option of femto from premium IOL budget of the patient, or better independence from glasses to patients?
No, definitely, ma'am. As I have already said, you are very rightly said, 99% of the patients, definitely 99% of the patients, even I would go with a premium IOL. But I think the debate here is about that 1% of the population who has a heavy pocket, is willing to pay a handsome amount of money, and still has a complicated cataract to handle. And in such cases, I think a femto procedure would be better as far as, and more so because difficult cases, as I said, once you advise a premium IOL, the patient's expectations gets heightened up. So it is better to play safe rather than being fancy.
Actually, you did not understand the topic. The topic is patient better spend money or premium.
I think Dr. Bharti, we will ask our panelists to opine.
Okay. Proceed.
Ma'am, I have to add something.
Okay, so now I'll request BP Kashyap sir to give his opinion.
Unbiased opinion.
Unbiased opinion.
Really. I'll make certain points for the benefit of everybody. If some patient comes to me, he said, money is not an issue. I want the best. Because when they come to a hospital like Drishtipunj and Drishti Nethralaya and such a high-fi hospital, smart hospital, they don't mind paying money because they have come for that. They want the best. They have no problem for the money. So by nature, everybody says, okay, the femto is the best, but it is the best. But do you think that the docking of the femto is easy? No. Do you think that the corneal incision, getting a perfect corneal incision is easy? No. Because the cornea is curved and the flattening effect, that you do not know where is the exact limbar site. So it's really difficult. It's not easy. And let me tell you very frankly that many of the femto platform, they don't do a corneal incision. They just do a nucleotomy rhexis and they start with the incision given by the knife. So it's not easy. The third is rhexis is the best in the femto. But while docking, if you get an air bubble in between, then rhexis is incomplete, and then rhexis become very, very difficult and tricky. Because in the circle of this rhexis, if there is a tag remained, it is not cut, it's very, very hard time because these rhexis are very, very weak. And the nucleotomy, they show in your edited videos that the hard nucleus and you do the nucleotomy in fragment and this method, the hard cataract, our heart, it never cuts through and through. It is difficult. Moreover, if you have charged the patient a very high amount of money, you, in your inner sense, you feel that the patient has paid so much, you have to do a good surgery, you have to give a best result and all that. I'll tell you one more thing, that even the irrigation aspiration, the cortical aspiration, it also becomes difficult because the rhexis margins are not all that good. But I love this femto as a challenge. I like to do more and more cases of femto, but these are the disadvantages.
Thank you, sir. Subhash, sir.
When the most experienced surgeon doing femto has already spoken so well about it, I don't think there is place for me to speak because I don't have any access to femto, but I still believe that going through the literature and hearing all those things, that it has very limited role in the current scenario, and just considering the cost and benefit, I think that it has long way to go unless some new devices come where this femto is incorporated in the microscope or something like that, which can be there in the OT, which actually saves the time and at the same time saves the money, then that would be the best thing to have.
Sir, if we use femto or we put premium IOL, only
I would
to the bank is the company wala, and the doctor is only left with this much only.
No, I would prefer to have premium IOL rather than wasting so much money on because as far as I am concerned, because I can do surgery in complicated case, so that's my issue. But if you consider the other one, but again, Dr. Bharti has said that this machine is only available to those who are versatile surgeon or prolific surgeon or already have attained certain height. So
very big people.
Ma'am, I have something to add.
अरे रेखा, ट्रस्टी पैनल की बात हो रही है, नाउ डॉक्टर विभूति भूषण, डॉक्टर शैलेंद्र सिंह, सुनील सिंह, तुम लोग को बुलाओ.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes. फटाफट. हाँ.
Yeah. As Dr. Subhash said, Dr. Kashyap has already summed up beautifully. But one thing I would like to say about Dr. Subhash, I have worked with him for about 5 years, and as far as capsular rhexis is concerned, I have never seen him abandoning any phaco procedure because of trouble, whether it was a hypermature cataract, whether there was extension, whether the nucleus was grade 5 or black cataract. I've never seen him do that. So if he is comfortable, if a surgeon like him is comfortable doing rhexis, even if there is some problem with the rhexis, but the procedure can be completed efficiently, then that actually gives you a big message.
Thank you, Dr. Vibhuti.
Okay, Rumta sir, Satyajit sir, Shalendra sir.
I have absolutely no confusion in my mind. If you are buying an Audi, you need an Autobahn. You need a good German highway to drive that good car. Any patient who can afford 75,000 can also pay 1.25 lakhs for a femto surgery and can go ahead with that. We are not talking.
अरे नहीं, कितना पेशेंट लगा के चला गया?
Precisely, Dr. Satyajit, I agree. Why not give femto along with premium IOL?
लगाकर चला गया.
Those who can pay 75 can pay 1.25.
Dr. Nimmi will charge for both the femto and the premium IOL.
And the premium IOL.
No
Yes.
confusion. You need a femto laser for that. I cannot afford it. Many cannot afford it. That is a different matter. But
Oh,
when
there are so many patients. They have come with femto and supraprobe.
when you
No.
charging the patient 75,000 rupees, that's a huge amount of money. You need to give the very best to your patient, and that includes femto laser. There is absolutely no confusion about that. Sir is saying that there may be air bubbles, so on and so forth. That's like saying if I buy an
who told you that this is the best technology?
if everything is perfect, the patient will be the happiest. Premium and flat.
अरे तुमको कौन बोल दिया कि बेस्ट?
रुकता सर आप बोलिए.
सत्यजीत इलेक्शन में खड़ा हो रहा है.
ये इलेक्शन में खड़ा हो रहा है, इसको वोट नहीं देंगे.
खाली हम एक बात ऐड करना चाहेंगे कि सत्यजीत देखो, they come for the flax, but they say कि सर रूम रेंट माफ नहीं हो सकता है.
रुकता सर आप बताइए.
Indian monofocal.
As far as comparison between flex and premium IOL, I will say that if it is really useful in grade 5 or 6 harder cataract, then only flex is useful for common man.
Sir, cataract कटता ही नहीं है.
Thank you, sir. And
कटता ही नहीं है. Mohita Sharma. Over to Mohita Sharma.
Dr. Reena Bhagat, I wanted an opinion from her also because she's.
Okay. Yes. And Dr. Tanisha from WAS Jharkhand. I forgot.
Dr. Reena, please.
हेलो.
हाँ, डॉक्टर रीना बताइए.
मैं तो सबसे पहले ये बोलूंगी कि सब ये जितने भी प्रीमियम ऑयल्स हैं या फिर फ्लैक्स हैं, जितने भी स्टडीज हैं, अभी जो रिसेंट स्टडीज है उसके हिसाब से तो फ्लैक्स को कहीं भी सुपीरियर नहीं बताया गया है फेको से. न्यू स्टडीज जो अभी मैं आज भी देख रही थी अमेरिकन एकेडमी ऑफ ऑप्थेल्मोलॉजी में, तो उसमें भी जो जर्नल था उसमें भी जो न्यू रिसर्च है उसमें भी दिया गया है कि फ्लैक्स कहीं से भी सुपीरियर नहीं है फेको से. सेकंड क्या है कि जो ह्यूमन माइंडसेट, उनको पैसा है तो वो खर्च करेंगे, और खर्च करने के लिए हमारे मार्केट को भी पता है कि कुछ ना कुछ नया करना होगा, नया लाना होगा. तो इसलिए वो हम लोग को यूज करते हैं कंपनी, और कंपनी के पेशेंट को चूंकि पैसा है तो वो खर्चा करना चाहते हैं तो उनको देना ही पड़ेगा. दो चीज है. साइंटिफिकली तो सुपीरियर नहीं है, बट पैसा है लोगों के पास, वो खर्चा करेंगे. नहीं देंगे, एक्स्ट्रा अलग नहीं देंगे तो फिर अब आप कॉमन डॉक्टर में आ जाएंगे.
Okay, thank you, Reena ma'am. Now, Tanisha.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I would definitely agree with Dr. Bharati ma'am, because the patient जब OT के बाहर आता है उसको ये नहीं पूछना होता है कि मेरा इंट्रॉप क्या हुआ, कौन से टेबल पे लेटाया, फेमटो किया कि नहीं. उसको होता है कि what am I seeing? Am I spectacle dependent or am I viewing the world without spectacles? So it's up to you to offer a kawa biryani, or do you want the patient to walk out with the hiccups of kawa biryani, or you really want the patient? I was just reading an article, a very beautiful one in the Review of Ophthalmology, May 2020. It said it's a new era. It's the dawn of a monofocal plus era. So we have to think beyond the monofocals now. And all the new technology that is coming up with PanOptics, the EDOF, the iHands, we have to think beyond the monofocal. And the patient basically wants a life where the patient can be conveniently viewing all the things. So I think it would be not justified to say that, no, we are not going to give premium IOLs and we are only going to have our comfort with femto, because I've seen lots of femtos failing by my own eyes. Like the incisions need to be extended by, again, entry of the keratome, half incision being made by femto, and then the patients have a poor healing of those incisions. Plus, even like Dr. Kashyap rightly mentioned, that the rhexis margin is very, very weak after femto because it has micro jagging. So yeah, definitely a premium IL would be the best for a patient who is choosing between a femto and a premium IL. So
Okay,
completely
thank you,
back
Tanisha.
Dr. Bharti. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanisha. So we are really short of time.
Before over to the our judge,
yes.
judge Mohita
Yes.
Sharma, I would like to say वीडियो में कई बार पुतली बहुत छोटी हो जाती है.
Mohita ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Mohita ma'am, are you there? Probably
not there. Okay.
Dr. Mohita is not here.
Next topic.
Okay, so we'll move to the next debate.
Yes.
I'll call Dr. Shalini. Dr. Shalini, are you there? Dr. Shalini?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you can start your presentation. Her presentation is optical PK versus DSEK.
Is my slide visible to everyone?
Yes. Yeah. It's visible and you're audible.
Good evening, respected senior. Today, I would like to first thank the WAS for giving me opportunity to speak on this virtual podium. So the topic of debate is optical PK versus DSEK, and I'm speaking in favor of optical PK. As we know, corneal blindness is one of the major causes of blindness in India, and according to NPCB, out of 12 million people, 6.8 million are unilaterally corneal blind, and 1 million out of them are bilaterally corneal blind. So it is especially this group of people, if we treat them for the corneal blindness, it is a big boon to them. Only way for the treatment of corneal blindness is keratoplasty, and it has improved a lot from penetrating to lamellar keratoplasty. But I still feel that optical PK is the most suitable and the most widely done surgery in India, and I will try to justify my points by following presentations. So indications for DSEK is itself a limiting factor. In optical PK, any layer of corneal pathology can be treated with the help of optical PK, whereas in DSEK, the indication is limited to the endothelium only, like Fuchs dystrophy, congenital hereditary. I would like to say early bullous keratopathy. And I won't be wrong if I ask any of the ophthalmologists, the most common cause of corneal blindness, what we see in our regular OPD, is corneal scar and not the dystrophies. I have quoted two studies here. This study is done in the blind school in 9 different states of India. Irrespective of age group, it has shown that corneal scarring is the most common cause of corneal blindness. The second study here, the second graph, which is taken from Andhra Pradesh eye disease study, it shows that the prevalence of corneal dystrophies is much less than that of the corneal scar, and DSEK has no role in corneal scar. Of course, PBK and ABK, we do get to see these cases more in our OPD, but according to a study done by Dr. Basak published in IJO, he has given a very good result of DSEK in PBK and ABK, but he has put a certain exclusion criteria, and the criteria are corneal stromal scarring, vitreous in AC, aphakic cases. But how many of us we actually see such cases of bullous keratopathy in our OPD? So, and the third point is paucity of corneal donation, and getting a good quality of cornea is another restricting factor. Causes are various. The causes may be less awareness of donation. Even if the person know about the corneal donation, they are reluctant to donate a cornea from a young diseased person. Then less practice of hospital corneal retrieval is also in India. DSEK has a steeper learning curve. According to there is a huge bulk of corneal blindness, and we need to treat more and more general ophthalmologists to do more and more keratoplasty, and it is always easy to train a general ophthalmologist to do optical PK than to train them in the DSEK. I will not go much in detail with the DSEK complications, but one of the major striking factor is endothelial cell loss after the DSEK surgery. It is seen that DSEK surgery has more endothelial loss than that of the optical PK. In the conclusion, I would like to say, no doubt, DSEK is technically better surgery, which gives an early visual recovery, less astigmatism, no suture-related complication. There are many good points of DSEK than optical PK, but what we need in Indian scenario is to reduce the bulk of corneal blindness due to corneal scarring. And that in that case, optical PK will always hold a very important place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini. Now I'll request Dr. Nidhi to come with her presentation.
Yeah, in the meanwhile, I'll just interrupt and say, ask the enrolled people that the attendee link is not working. Perhaps people are not able to join. Can they look into it? None of the attendees are able to join. Thank you, Dr. Nidhi. Please proceed.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, seniors. Thank you, WAS, Bihar and Jharkhand chapter for inviting me. Dr. Shalini, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Nidhi, you can continue.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
So at the outset, I would like to say to Dr. Shalini that we are talking about DSEC and PK in indications which are common to both of them. DSEC cannot be definitely done in corneal scarring and corneal opacity because that is not an indication for DSEC anyways. So there have been a lot of reports with the results of penetrating keratoplasty. There is a lot of astigmatism, delayed visual rehabilitation, the risk of an open sky surgery, lifetime risk of wound dehiscence, graft rejection and failure, and a lot of suture related problems. Now, since the introduction of DSEC in 2004 and popularized in 2006, according to a 10-year review in US, it was seen that full thickness keratoplasty decreased to 42% and lamellar keratoplasty increased to 58%. And DSEC was the most common type of corneal transplantation in 2014, which was 50% of the total keratoplasties. 75% of the corneal decompensation was managed by EK in 2014, and it was the treatment of choice for more than 90% of FECD cases and 60% of PBK cases. Thus, DSEC remained the most commonly performed procedure according to the Eye Bank Association of America's statistical report. So why DSEC? Look at the sutures which are there in a full thickness keratoplasty. We will at some point of time in the follow-up of our patients will face one of the challenges of having a loose suture, a suture infiltrate, a graft infection due to a loose suture, and a broken suture for which the patient did not present to the hospital. According to a study in which 633 grafts were analyzed, the frequency of suturing for non-traumatic indications was around 9%. And the underlying cause was suture-related problems, 72%, development of ectasia, progressive steepening of the keratometric values, and surgically induced astigmatism. Thus, no matter what kind of suturing a surgeon is doing, whether it be interrupted, single or double continuous, astigmatism is bound to arise in a full thickness keratoplasty. While in DSEC, if you see, the mean refractive change is around 0.8 diopter, there is a hyperopic shift, and depending on the type of procedure, standalone or a triple procedure, it may increase up to 1.15 diopter. The visual acuity also, recovery is faster and to a greater extent in DSEC compared to PK. Graft rejection, if you look, for example, in this study, the cumulative 2-year rejection rate was around 20% for PK, while 12% for DSEC in indications where the patient demographics and the topical steroid regimen was same. The IOP control also is better in DSEC, and this is due to the diminished surgery-induced damage to the anterior chamber angle and trabecular meshwork and reduced post-operative use of steroids. The endothelial cell loss is equivalent or maybe better in the survival is better in DSEC, and the DSEC grafts experience more initial cell loss until 1 year, and then there is a slow and steady cell loss over the next 4 years. PK, on the other hand, there is a rapid cell loss in the first 5 years, which then stabilizes. So a lot of reports were there in which I found that DSEC is continuing to have better median endothelial cell density at 10 years as compared with that at 5 years with PK. So there are various studies, one study by Singapore Corneal Transplant Registry data showing that graft survival is better in DSEK versus PK. Looking at graft rejection, the frequency of graft rejection episodes is higher after PK than DSEK for primary endothelial disease. DSEK after a failed PK is also a useful alternative to a repeat standard PK, especially when the eyes have an acceptable topography and refractive outcome before the failure. This combines greater wound stability and reduced suture-related complications with visual outcomes and graft survival rates compared to those of a repeat PK. Looking at wound dehiscence, a patient who has undergone PK will always have a lifetime risk of dehiscence, even if the sutures are on or off. And we cannot deny that an open sky surgery like PK will always have the risk of an expulsive choroidal hemorrhage, no matter what preventive steps we have taken. Thus, talking about one negative of DSEK, what they said is there could be an early graft detachment, but a lot of reports show that this is more only in the initial learning curve, which reduces drastically later on. Talking about donor tissue, what Dr. Shalini said, a lot of tissues which have anterior corneal scars or there's a dense arcus or cases post LASIK or PRK which we are going to get eventually, these cannot be used for a full thickness graft, but if the endothelium is healthy, the tissue can be used for a DSEK. HRCP not that strong in India yet, but this paper by Dr. Sharma showed that over 14 months in more than 1,000 donor corneas, around 50% of them were optical grade and 91 were through HRCP. So the take home message here is PK versus DSEK. If the indication is common for both, then DSEK is preferable over full thickness keratoplasty unless there is some contraindication. I rest my case here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. Dr. Shalini, 1 minute for you for rebuttal.
I would just like to say that no matter any improvement in the field of surgery is for the betterment of the community. There is no doubt that DSEK has much lesser complication than the optical PK, but how many of our population is actually benefited with this procedure is a big question. So we can compare SICS and phacoemulsification, but still the maximum number of cataract bulk which is done by SICS, not by phaco. I mean, till now it is still phaco. Many people are doing, but SICS is like the option for the cataract, and it will remain always. And the same goes for the optical PK also.
Okay, so Dr. Nidhi, another 1 minute for you.
Well, I would say that I think in 2017-18, India had done around 15 lakh cataract surgeries. And if we calculate that the rate of PBK is around 1%, then also we are adding at least 15 to 20,000 new PBK cases in the pool, except what is already existing. So in these cases, instead of giving them a sutured surgery, we would want to give them a sutureless surgery. Imagine a farmer coming to you who has undergone SICS because it was easier, and now he goes to farming every day. What would you do? Would you give him a one-time endothelial keratoplasty with maybe 1 or 2 sutures which can be removed or are hidden under the conjunctiva, or give him a new graft with 16 to 18 sutures and leave him in the open, in the wild with those sutures and farming and everything else? So why do corneal scars happen? Why do corneal opacities happen? The foremost thing is trauma and infection. So these cases with a graft again becomes a bigger risk factor to all these patients.
I do agree this.
Okay.
We get the excellent quality or good quality of corneal.
Let's have the
so
panel.
now, now I'll request Dr. Shailen Singh sir. Sir, are you there? Dr. Shailen sir? Oh, I think sir is. I think sir is not here. So, Dr. Subhash sir, would you like to say something?
For the cases where actually we can just do the endothelial transplantation, then that's the better option because of a lot of advantages. Shalini, on the other hand, is saying that the magnitude of the problem, like particularly in our state, where most of the cases are because of corneal ulcer, definitely in those cases, it's optical PK, which is the procedure of choice. But if you consider the patients where the main problem is there in the endothelium, then it's the DSEK which is to be opted all the time. I think that gives the best result and the rapid result. So both are saying in their own perspective, but DSEK, if you consider the case where DSEK is indicated, DSEK is always preferable.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, Kashyap, sir, your opinion.
Madam, one thing is sure that if the indications are there for both, number one. Number two, if the expertise is there for the both, then I'll go for DSEK, definitely. There's no two thoughts about it. And the other advantage of doing DSEK is you have some tissue left for you for doing a laminar keratoplasty for some other people. So DSEK is always better. In my career, I had been doing PK because I didn't do DSEK at that time. But then since Nidhi had come, so within 1 year, she has done more than 100 cases of grafting, and most of them are DSEK. The time also consumed is less. The rehabilitation is very fast. So even if the number of cases for keratoplasty is very high, there's no harm. I mean, the time is there, and you're quicker and faster, and the rehabilitation is better in DSEK. This is my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Sunil Singh, sir, would you like to share something? Sir, Sunil Singh, sir? Oh, I think he's not there. So, Bharti ma'am, Bharti Sharma ma'am.
Yeah, hi. So I totally agree with Dr. Nidhi. So that I think DSEK is the way forward. So we should not, it is, PK is like doing ECC IOL and DSEK is like doing a phaco. New residents, they are starting with endothelial and the anterior lamellar surgeries. The way forward is definitely lamellar surgeries. Dr. Shalini said that we cannot do DSEK in cases of vitrectomized eyes. I think she should, I want to tell her that we can even do DSEK in cases of aphakia. And we can easily put a sheet slide and put the graft, and all of us are learning this and we are all doing it now. So now DMAC has already come. And in cases of scars, no doubt, only in cases of corneal thinning, where very deep scar, then PK definitely is the way forward. But there also we can try some deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty. But in cases of all the endothelial problems, I think even after post PK where the grafts are failed, we are doing DSEK. So I think definitely the way forward is PK is DSEK and not PK. We avoid all the open globe related problems, the suture related problems. And it is what is important is what patient will see. So the faster visual rehabilitation, definitely DSEK is long way ahead. I totally support Dr. Nidhi.
I would like a comment from Dr. Rakhi. Please unmute yourself, Rakhi.
Both Dr. Shalini and Dr. Nidhi have presented or highlighted all pros and cons of both the surgeries very nicely. Definitely there is a difference in the indication. PK is suitable for certain indications and DSEK is suitable for certain indications. But as far as this graft infection is concerned, or if you take away the suture related problems of PK, then sometime the cutting the graft, making the graft is sometimes become difficult, and you can have complication at the time of making a button for DSEK. At that time you have to, if you don't have any spare cornea, then you have to switch to PK or some other graft you may need it. So being in a government setup or being taking care of this scarcity of cornea and taking care of so many patients with microbial keratitis and late presentation of fuchs and late presentation of PBK, we have to be skilled in PK also. DSEK is no doubt is a way forward, and we have to be skilled and we have to get a good hold on this procedure, and this is very good outcome with early visual recovery and less astigmatism. But we cannot forget this PK, and it is still a gold standard procedure for 75% of cases in our scenario. We cannot compare our outcome with the Western countries. We cannot compare our iBank system with the iBank of America. We cannot compare. Still, we have only 25% of cases are being treated with D6 and 75% with the PK across the India. We cannot compare the cases where 50% of all keratoplasties are treated with lamellar keratoplasty, because their cases have early presentation, Fuchs and PBKs with early presentation, not after scarring and epithelial thickening. We have cases with late presentation, healed keratitis, and definitely we have scarcity of cornea, good quality of cornea. We have corneas, but not very good, with good specular count. So definitely PK, still there is a room for PK. We cannot replace this procedure with any lamellar keratoplasties.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so now we come to the end of this debate. Ranjana ma'am, you can take over.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rekha. Now we start with the third debate of the series, and that is pediatric ophthalmology as a subspecialty. We have Dr. Vandana Prasad speaking for the motion. Dr. Vandana?
Yeah.
Can you share your screen?
It's 7:30.
Is there an issue?
What's it? Can you see that?
Yeah, thank you.
So this is a very...
We can't hear you. Could you be louder a bit?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can afford to be a little louder. Yeah, you can afford to be a little louder.
Okay. So, is it okay now?
No.
You can't hear? You can't hear me? Hello?
Yeah. We can hear you, but it's going on low and high. So
Okay. So this is a topic very close to my heart, pediatric ophthalmology. I hope you can hear.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a topic which is very my favorite topic, and I think all of us like kids. All of us like kids, and there are so many kids in our lives. So this is a topic. I think many postgraduate students must be thinking what to do after post-graduation in ophthalmology. They are all confused with so many branches around, with so many subspecialties around. So just think, and if you want to choose a branch of passion and skill, so it is a pediatric ophthalmology. So what does a pediatric ophthalmologist do? He does a good refraction at all ages, including preschool children. He does a good cataract surgery. He does a good squint surgery, and is able to perform a RUP screening of a newborn which he can refer the child to a retina specialist for laser if required. And he should be able to diagnose newborn eye diseases, because the whole spectrum of diseases are different in babies. If you normally after MBBS, we want to become a pediatrician and definitely not a geriatrician. We want to become a pediatrician because we want to be associated with the future of mankind. But when it comes to ophthalmology, you want to become a cataract surgeon, right? You want to do just cataract surgery in old people who have lived their lives. So who will look after the young lives? Just think about them. So if you start doing cataract surgery in the adults, you are so proud of yourself that, okay, I'm a very good cataract surgeon. According to 2011 Indian census, this was the pediatric population, about 158 million, out of which 117 million were rural children and 41 million were urban children. In India, there are 104 million people who are more than 60 years of age. So, but see what has happened. We have so many cataract surgeons all around us. There are so many cataract surgeons for such a group of people. But in our society, All India Ophthalmic Society also, so many ophthalmologists are registered. But how many are working in pediatric ophthalmology? Less than 0.5% of the ophthalmologists are working as pediatric ophthalmologists. But the load is too high. Too many children need your services, but the ophthalmologists are not ready to give their services just because it is tedious. So children are our future. We must take care of them with maximum effort. You don't want to become a pediatric ophthalmologist just because of the challenges. But when you see such a child before cataract and see the smile of the child after the child starts seeing, so you have the excessive of doing such a surgery. The load of pediatric blindness in the world is too high. Now the childhood blindness has become a public health concern all across the world. The current prevalence of childhood blindness is 0.8 per 1,000 children in India. A child with blindness can have developmental delays, more chances of hospitalization, more chances to die as compared to a sighted child. It affects the educational activities, mobility from early stage of life, resulting in lack of employment privilege. So the childhood blindness has become the priority target of Vision 2020 due to its impact on psychosocial and social growth of child. A lot of effort in the form of timely neonatal eye care, pediatric surgical services, proper refractive strategies is the need of the hour. And a huge shortage of pediatric ophthalmologists. It's all over the world. It's not only in India, it's all over the world. Very few people are working as pediatric ophthalmologists. So imagine a child. There are not enough pediatric ophthalmologists in our country. Common causes of seeking advice in pediatric ophthalmology (OPD) was refractive error, which needs a good refraction to be done. A general ophthalmologist just keeps on deferring the refraction in preschool age children. The common surgical procedure conducted was a pediatric cataract, which needs extra surgical skill and, of course, a squint surgery. So, be a pediatric ophthalmologist and save the future of the country. There is a surge of pediatric blindness due to increase in premature birth and all those babies being saved. But what's the use if they are blind? So at this point, we need pediatric ophthalmologists. We understand that it is difficult to examine a pediatric patient, but don't avoid them. Be skillful and innovative. Pediatric surgery is one of the easiest, but a lot of Hawa about it. You may be a magnificent adult cataract surgeon, but when it comes to a pediatric cataract, you are wary. Be a part and help in screening of ROP so that you can save so many children going blind. Help children from recovering from being cross-eyed. Would you not like your child or any child in your family to have a normal eye and a normal vision? What would you do if a child in your family or extended family have an eye problem? Going and hunting a pediatric ophthalmologist. Shame on you being an ophthalmologist. So, don't choose any other brand. Be a pediatric ophthalmologist.
Thank you, Dr. Vandana. I would now hand over the podium to Dr. Tarannum. Dr. Tarannum, kindly share your screen.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am going to speak on pediatric ophthalmology as a subspecialty. To choose or not, I am going to talk against it. Pediatric workup. Pediatric patients are difficult to examine. More time is spent on examination. Refraction is complex and time-taking. Rules are different and have to be learned. Vision assessment is difficult. Lots of systems have been introduced to assess vision, but the important thing is that these systems are usually very costly. Clinical skills are required, and in addition to this, patience and humor becomes the key. The time commitment required to conduct a thorough workup coupled with lower financial reimbursement is very taxing. Parents and grandparents tend to ask double the questions than adults. We pediatric only ophthalmologists wish that only if time was money. Usually training facilities, usually medical colleges do not have a separate pediatric subspecialty unit, as a result of which PG students have inadequate exposure to pediatric ophthalmology. Fellowship programs after PG are few, long duration with low financial support. Fellowship uptake has been declining over years. And what to do after doing a fellowship? Join a government setup? There is no system that a trained pediatric ophthalmologist can establish a pediatric unit. You have to do an SR-ship, which is a waste of fellowship skill. If you join a private setup with dedicated subspecialty, it's okay, but then it is rare to find. If you join a private setup with without subspecialty, you will end up as a cataract surgeon. And if you start your own practice, there is more investment with lesser outcome. General anesthesia is another problem. What makes pediatric anesthesia different? Airway. Hypoxia is the most common causes of pediatric perioperative cardiac arrest. Infants turn blue fast. Upper airway obstruction during anesthesia is fairly common. Laryngospasm is a fairly common problem. Infants and young adults are not small adults. One size fits all does not apply. Unfortunately, pediatric anesthesia training centers are very few in India. So even when we have trained pediatric ophthalmologists, we don't have trained pediatric anesthetists. Sometimes things become difficult to handle. Pediatric cataract surgeries is time consuming. Include the GA time. It needs a sophisticated infrastructure. Microsurgical instruments, vitrectomy, technically more challenging, and creating a team, training a team becomes a part of the job. In 1943, when Poston Bader limited his practice to children and became the first pediatric ophthalmologist, he believed that children needed full-time dedicated care, time, counseling, and follow-up, which becomes difficult in a heavy adult OPD schedule. But this has become a separate specialty, and this became a separate specialty dedicated to children. In fact, pediatric ophthalmology was the first subspecialty which was developed. In modern day practice, all ophthalmologists who know adult cataract surgery are doing pediatric cataract. My juniors often complain that the cases which are referred to them are usually babies, complicated cataract, systemic anomalies, microphthalmos. Some have started doing glaucoma, others are adding up oculoplasty and retina to their baskets. One of my friends from Meerut is going for a refractive surgery workup. Income and private practice is difficult. and it is time consuming and can interfere with the family responsibility. So you need to have a good financial backup. And if you have a good financial backup in the form of an orthopedic surgeon, as in the case of my opponent, then you can go ahead with your passion. But the reality is actually grim, and pediatric ophthalmology has been reported as one of the endangered subspecialty in the American Academy. A recent article in the IGO is an eye-opener regarding this. This is a photograph of me 10 years back when I started pediatric subspecialty in rural Bihar. We were 3 pediatric ophthalmologists at that time. It has been 10 years since then, and we have come to a number 4. So until and unless establishment of pediatric eye setup in each government hospital is not there, and incorporation of pediatric ophthalmology as a social responsibility by the leading practitioner is not done, the situation will remain grim. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tarannum. Tarannum ने अपना दुखड़ा रोया है और जबरदस्त रोया है. Dr. Vandana, you get a chance of rebuttal.
लेकिन वंदना, keep your mic close to your mouth in a kissing condition and then talk, because we cannot hear you, but we can understand you.
Okay. So my Tarannum, you have to make friends with some anesthetists and some pediatricians also to be a pediatric ophthalmologist. And you can always be a practice of pediatric ophthalmology. You can be a cataract surgeon, but don't ignore pediatric ophthalmology. It has to be who will look after the children. Imagine the children all around you and the family. And you know what happens nowadays? Many people are spending so much money on IVF babies, and can't they spend some on their surgery? Do you know how much they cost IVF? Each IVF? Audio. 7 lakhs. Each IVF baby is costing 7 lakhs. So they can't spend something on their cataract surgery or squint surgery.
That is again another job of a pediatric ophthalmologist, to search for a pediatric anesthesia, to search for a contact lens specialist, to search for a low vision aid. So we keep on searching all of our life. Nahi ye acha nahi hai, nahi wo acha nahi hai. So that is another thing. And cataract
you get the happiness when you see a child who is blind.
We would like, there's just one rebuttal that is allowed. We would like esteemed panel to speak. Rumta sir, what is your opinion?
What I wanted to say that this pediatric ophthalmology is a very good branch. It is a challenging branch, of course. It's a real service to the society. If you are not ready to take up this challenge, at least 10% of population will be deprived of their vision, and this will be called iatrogenic blindness. And this will be because of us, if you are not going to take up this challenge. So we cannot be escapist. Some of us will have to take up this challenge.
Sir, आप समाज सेवा बहुत करते हैं, sir. That shows in your version.
प्रॉब्लम तो हर चीज में है. अब सुभाष जी के बगल में कोई क्लिनिक खोलेगा तो उसमें भी चैलेंज है, लेकिन करना है ना. तो वैसे ही हर चीज तो चैलेंज है.
Dr. Satyajit, would you like to say, put in a word?
I think pediatric ophthalmology has to be a subspecialty by itself because it requires a lot of different sets of skills and acumen to treat the kids. And I absolutely sympathize with Dr. Tarannum for all the difficulties she's having, and still she's going ahead and dedicating all her services. She's absolutely amazing. But pediatric ophthalmology does need to be a different subspecialty altogether.
Vibhuti, I would like a word from you.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with the concerns of Dr. Tarannum, but finding a good pediatrician and a pediatric anesthetist, it's just a one-time this thing. You can develop a team. You can, once it is there, so you can always get. And the second thing is that if you make people aware, you will be flooded with cases of squint, strabismus, and you hardly have any consumable. Whatever you get is you pocket the whole money. So you don't actually spend anything on the surgery.
But the patient expectancy is
compensate.
higher than in cataract surgery.
Yeah, it is higher than in cataract surgery. But then because of this cosmetic nature of this surgery, people charge very high. So
yes.
Ma'am, there is one other point also.
Dr. Prasad, yes, sir.
She can compensate.
Most of the pediatric patients are referred patients. What I would like to add.
एक बार वो सिस्टम इन प्लेस आ गया उसके बाद फिर यू कैन रियली क्योंकि बहुत कम लोग हैं आई एम श्योर डॉक्टर वंदना इज फ्लडेड विद केसेस बिकॉज़ इन झारखंड वी हार्डली हैव एनी pediatric ophthalmologist. I am not aware if anybody else is doing pediatric ophthalmology.
And who said that the pediatric ophthalmologists are not able to handle the old patients? They are also doing cataract for the old patients. They are earning money from there.
Yes,
and
Taranum
they are
is a
doing,
good example.
And they are doing it some charity, or you can say that feeling joy of doing something for a child who is blind, going to blind, is a different thing than just helping the older population. So in that way, that thing, I think pediatric ophthalmology is much more rewarding in that sense that it gives you immense sense of satisfaction.
Yes.
एक ही चीज है कि anesthetics की बात है, लेकिन आज के दिन में there are a lot of anesthetics like pediatric surgery which was not in vogue few years back. Now there are a lot of pediatric anesthetists who can give anesthesia to a lot of complicated multi-organ diseases which are being operated everywhere nowadays. एक दिन 2 दिन का बच्चे को भी लोग एनेस्थीसिया दे रहे हैं, so that's not issue nowadays. और हमको तो लगता है कि पीडियाट्रिक ऑप्थेल्मोलॉजी ये सब स्पेशलिटी जरूर डेवलप करनी चाहिए बिकॉज हम लोग जो बिजी हैं वी कैन नॉट डिवोट दैट मच टाइम टू आवर पीडियाट्रिक पेशेंट्स. वी गेट इरिटेटेड बिकॉज वी हैव नॉट बीन ट्रेन्ड लाइक दैट, but they are especially trained to deal how to deal these babies, and so in that way they can deliver in a better way and they can deliver much better than what we can. So pediatric ophthalmology एक चीज और भी है कि आजकल कंपटीशन के जमाना में पीडियाट्रिक ऑप्थेल्मोलॉजी बहुत कम है, इसलिए उनका स्कोप बहुत अच्छा है अभी.
जी मैं हाँ मैं ये बोल रहा था कि apart from all these, you know, what we had done is we went to all the school principal and said that before they take admission to anybody, they should be consulted with the ophthalmologist. So there are a lot of diseases which can be, you know, taken care of. So and pediatric ophthalmology also get a gain out of it. Number 2, the most important thing I wanted to tell you that in Dr. Vandana's place is perfectly, her hospital perfectly matches with the Vastu. You know what? If the Vastu is good, when the kid goes there, he starts giggling and smiling and all that. Or Vastu अगर खराब है ना, the moment the बच्चा goes there, he starts crying. Oh my God! And then you had it. ऊपर से अगर आपका चेहरा मेरे समान गब्बर सिंह के समान हो, फिर तो बच्चा तो आंख नहीं खोलने वाला है.
Dr. Soni would want to say something. Dr. Soni.
And then you have to keep all kinds of toffees with you so that you can give them the toffee and all that. So it has to be, you know, you have to have a pediatric ophthalmologist. It is essential, and it is what we were taught in way back in 1977 when we started in MBBS. When the professor said, in the jamana of super specialty, दाहिना नाक का कोई और स्पेशलिस्ट होगा और बायां नाक का कोई और स्पेशलिस्ट होगा. So you know, pediatric ophthalmology.
Dr. Soni and Dr. Pammi have to put in a word. They wanted to.
I would just like to say that yes, although it's very challenging, it's also very fulfilling. And in a government setup, when you're trained in pediatric ophthalmology, like I was for ROP in 2004 and later for pediatric ophthalmology in 2011, what I found is that I was able to approach my pediatric patients in a better way. And somehow the pediatricians got a whiff of it. And now most of the pediatric patients are coming along in my unit, even when this is a general OPD. So it's almost behaving like a pediatric super specialty OPD. So I think people do get the whiff, and especially it's useful for in a government setup. If you've got a pediatric department, a very active pediatrics department along with this, and you have an ICU and things like that.
Dr. Pammi also wanted to say something.
To do this.
And Dr. Anindya from Jharkhand side, team was Jharkhand. Dr.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Dr. Pammi, can you say unmute yourself? Unmute yourself, please. Yes, ma'am. Is there? Yeah.
I need, ma'am, as the speaker is saying, pediatric ophthalmologist super specialty is really needed in our community health, because as a general ophthalmologist, we can deal with all the diseases, but we can't deal with the pediatric patients. So pediatric ophthalmologist is really needed.
सब भूल गए हैं कि वो लोग बिहार की तरफ से बोलना है उन लोगों को. इसको याद है कि झारखंड की तरफ से बोल रही है. डॉक्टर नित्या?
No, ma'am.
हमारे स्टेट की
अरे वो बहुत अच्छा बच्चा है, जान गया है,
रांची को
सच
भूल
बोल रहा है.
डॉक्टर
अनिंद्या अनुराधा.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible, madam?
Yes.
बोलो भाई, बोलो.
Ma'am, Dr. Taranum ने जो कहा, it is actually against the Hippocrates oath. So when you have lost your oath, there is no point of talking about our profession. We cannot just run out. So that's the end of the argument.
It's not.
No, this debate is not to be taken seriously. She's a very devout ophthalmologist, and she just has been given all the downside. Bihar has been handed all of the high risk topics to debate against, but she's trying her best to debate it. But
Yes. So, ma'am, we are also not taking it seriously. Our job is to defend Vandana madam.
Point I wanted to put up.
We should win.
No, actually, I don't want to win.
Thank you. Taranum, you wanted to say?
There is one point I want to point out. I wanted insight that PGs should have an insight into what they are going into if they are taking pediatric. They should have an insight. That insight we have to give as pediatric ophthalmologists. The challenges.
Other than the retina,
and also we want them to. The hospital, we want the government hospital to to give separate pediatric setup, every government hospital. That was my main aim. We have to do that.
This is the unfortunate truth that all other subspecialties need a backup of cataract surgery.
We as private practitioners,
all the retina people, oculoplasty people, pediatric ophthalmologists, they have cataract surgery as a backup. And it's still going to take a lot more time to practice your subspecialty only as
exactly
practice. Very difficult. Time has not come.
I want to add one thing. Don't ever think that pediatric ophthalmology is about anesthesia. It has so many other things to do. Even only surgery needs anesthesia. There are so many other diseases, so many other things to do in pediatrics.
I think now we should close the chapter of pediatric ophthalmology and move on to their last debate.
One more thing I will ask, like when we talked to Dr. Anindya, that Anindya, this is the debate topic, she told me, and I must appreciate her. She said, I am ready for the motion, against the motion. Aap mujhe jo bol do. So I really appreciate her for that.
Thank you. And now we have Dr. Ritika, who will be presenting her case, trabeculectomy in neovascular glaucoma, and she's for the motion. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Good evening, seniors and my dear colleagues. Today, I'll be speaking for trabeculectomy in neovascular glaucoma. As we know, neovascular glaucoma is a refractory glaucoma with poor visual prognosis. It is caused by posterior segment ischemia, leading to the release of angiogenic factors forming the new vessels, which obstruct the aqueous outflow and glaucoma. The management present, whatever management options we have today, which involves the treatment of the underlying pathology with surgical management of glaucoma. Excuse me, ma'am, are my slides visible?
Yes.
I'm changing the slides, but these are not changing actually.
Yes. On the slide itself, it will change.
You go to the cursor and you...
No, ma'am, it's not...
Do a left click on the slide. Oh, it's screen hi chala gaya.
You share screen again and you...
I'll just speak because it's not...
don't go full screen. Don't go. Exit the full screen mode. And then click on the individual slide and change it. Exit the full screen mode.
It's not even even the escape button is not working.
Okay.
I'll just speak then, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just speak because it's not working. Oh, now
Okay,
it's
now
working.
it's done. Yeah.
NVG is a refractory glaucoma with poor visual prognosis caused by posterior segment ischemia leading to the release of angiogenic factors which form neovessels causing obstruction to the aqueous outflow and hence increasing intraocular pressure. The management options are available with us where we identify the underlying etiology and managing it timely. And as there is glaucoma, the management involves control of intraocular pressure along with the underlying pathology management. The options available with us today are panretinal photocoagulation with use of anti-VEGF agents, which manage the underlying etiology, and surgery for intraocular pressure control. The surgical options that we have today with us are the trabeculectomy, glaucoma drainage devices, and the cyclodestructive procedures. Coming to the first option, cyclodestructive procedures. According to AAO recommendations, cyclodestructive procedures are indicated in eyes with minimal or no useful vision. A review published in Seminars of Ophthalmology has shown that a decrease in visual acuity in almost 64% of cases is seen after cyclodestructive procedures. Most of the studies in literature have shown a decrease in visual acuity in almost 22 to 64% of patients after cyclodestructive procedures. Phthisis is another known complication. So it should be reserved for patients with no or minimal useful vision, considering its complication and unpredictability. Coming to the second options, which are glaucoma drainage devices, they have a success rate of about 65% cases in cases of neovascular glaucoma with complications in many patients. Hypotony has been reported to be almost up to 35% of patients in a study published in Journal of Glaucoma in 2004. However, when we come to some recent studies, the success rate has remained same around 66, 65%, but then the glaucoma hypotony and all have reduced to about 10% of patients. Addition of the post-operative complication rates have decreased. The addition of intravitreal anti-VEGF agents in Ahmed glaucoma valve has again led to decreased in hyphema, post-operative hyphema, and number of last visit anti-glaucoma medications. However, the success rate remains the same. This is an RCT which has compared diode laser cyclophotocoagulation versus Ahmed glaucoma valve for neovascular glaucoma, and it says that the IOP reduction remains same, but there was more complications seen in cases of Ahmed glaucoma valve. So GDD is associated with more complication, a steeper learning curve, and is a costly affair. Coming to trabeculectomy, which is the most widely used surgery and the most studied filtration surgery today, the success rate with mitomycin C is almost similar even after trabeculectomy. In neovascular glaucoma patients, almost 65% at 2 to 3 years of follow-up. Various studies have been I have come across various studies which have reported a similar success rate of about 65%, which has been seen after as seen in GDD also. Most of the studies have reported hyphema as the most common complication, which is seen even after GDDs. Comparative studies between Ahmed glaucoma valve and trabeculectomy have shown a similar IOP reduction, but the less complications in trabeculectomy arm. This study also reports the same, a similar success rate, and there was no significant difference in both the groups. This is a meta-analysis published in 2019, which shows that AGV and trabeculectomy, there was no significant difference in IOP lowering efficacy and loss of light perception, but failure rates were lower in trabeculectomy group. Trabeculectomy with intravitreal anti-VEGF has been associated with similar success rates with lesser complications. Surgical ease is another reason, and it is more cost-effective. So my recommendation would be that the underlying pathology should be treated first. Trabeculectomy with MMC and anti-VEGF should be done in eyes with useful vision, preserving the others for future need. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ritika. And I request Dr. Anindya to please put up her presentation. Dr. Ritika, you get 1 minute for rebuttal after this presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you share your screen, please, Dr. Anindya?
Yes, ma'am. My screen is now shared.
Yeah, it's shared, but we don't see the PPT. Yeah, it can be seen.
Now, and I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not in the full screen mode. Do you want it in the full screen?
Thank you very much for.
Go to the slideshow, dear.
Yes. Yeah, sure. I'll
go to the slideshow, okay?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity against TRAB in neovascular glaucoma. So Dr. Ritika has presented many studies, but I'm sorry to say all those studies are actually taking the audience in a wrong way, because all the studies are, whatever you have presented today, actually they are not long-term studies. All your studies are of 1 year. Please visit it once again. So we cannot comment which one is better, especially in a neovascular case, when you are presenting just a 1 year follow-up study. Number two, you have told about the learning curvature. See, for the learning curvature, we have to learn more, we have to give the best. And regarding the cost, will come to the end, because you have also mentioned that using anti-VEGF with TRAB, the success rates are shown with anti-VEGF, with MMC, with the TRAB. The cost with all these things, and if you compare the cost of, even the RD valve, it will be the reverse. Right? So we have to go for all the options. So let's go for the next points that I'm going to show. See, as you said, NVG is completely different from the other glaucomas because the primary cause is lying in the retina. And so there is a high chance that the inflammation or the vitreous hemorrhage is going to repeat in future many a times. And we may need to go for repeat procedures like vitrectomies. So just to remind you, revise you, as you know, the main cause of a TRAB failure is episcleral and subconjunctival fibrosis. And what about neovascular glaucoma? It's all just filled with interleukins, with pro-inflammatory factors, with free radicals, with superoxides, and all those, pro-inflammatory possible in the eye. They are all filled with neovascular glaucoma. So how do you think that the trabeculectomy can stand for a longer time scientifically? So now comes what is alternative. You have already told. And see, as there are studies that you are showing, there are also studies they are showing AZB is now the effective and the safe method. What you have shown is the hypotony. Yes, you have shown it with the barbell, right? It's not with the AZB or with the valve ones. So this is again more reviews and more reviews. We have to follow the recent studies, not the older ones. And we have to also think scientifically. As you know, the statistician can do anything in the study. So this is again for the glaucoma laser that you have already shown. If the patient does not have that much of potential that we most of the time we find in neovascular glaucoma cases, why do you open the eyes in a TRAB? You are going to open the eyes for just giving nothing. Go for a laser. We have to think outside the box. What we were thinking, our previous doctors were thinking, we have to think in a different way to get something different and better. So what I want to say, if you will not jump up high and will say, grape to bhai khatta hai. We have to improve our learning curvature. We have to do better and better. We cannot just say because we are not doing the tube good, so we'll not be doing the tube good. It is scientifically, the tube has to be done. So the scientific way of approaching the neovascular glaucoma, give a high dose of systemic anti-glaucoma so that your cornea will be clear, then your topical will work, then go for PRP, address the first retina ischemia problem or anti-VEGF or vitrectomy with endolaser as per the media clearance is possible. Then if by chance your systemic anti-glaucoma is not responding at all, you can go for a gradual paracentesis, very guarded after giving anti-VEGF to prevent bleeding, and then go ahead for the main problem that already you have told. So if your IOP is still high, go for, if good vision potential, go for a valve. If a bad vision potential, go for a diode. So there is just, I'll say a no for TRAB, because trabeculectomy involves iridectomy. You cannot do a TRAB without iridectomy. So there is a chance of hypema. Pro-inflammatory factors are very high. You can land up with bad conjunctiva in these cases because vitrectomy can be before or after the procedure, and you are not taking out the culprit. So obviously, there is a chance of high failure. If the culprit is coming back, you have to address it. You have to do a vitrectomy at any point of the time. So your conjunctiva is going to be compromised. So we have to think in a more scientific way. It should be, we should go for a tube if it is seeing. If it is not seeing, there is no point of going inside. Just go for a laser. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anindya. And now I would request a rebuttal from Dr. Ritika.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, ma'am. Nice presentation. But then again, there are a few questions. You said hyphema. What is the incidence of hyphema after valve implantation? First. Second, why not to preserve the valves for a future surgery? Even the valves may fail. You are saying the conjunctiva is good.
I cannot.
No, she's audible.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Audible. Yes.
So my first question is, your concern was hyphema after iridectomy. So is hyphema not common after valve implantation? First.
Where you will find more hyphema, in paracentesis of valve or in iridectomy of trabeculectomy?
No, you just go back to the literature. Go back to literature and hyphema.
You have to think scientifically. There are hyphema present in
for scientific thinking. We go back to the literature and we just see the incidence of hyphema even after Ahmed glaucoma valve or Adi valves are not less. First,
not less,
second,
but
I have not said
it is going to be more. In trabeculectomy, it is going to be more.
The thing is, a safe trabeculectomy, even in our case of neovascular.
What do you mean by a safe? Are you not going to do a iridectomy? Are you not going to do a iridectomy?
Iridectomy is a must. There is a regression of neovessels after intravitreal or intracameral anti-VEGF in almost after 3 days. 3 days after injection of anti-VEGF, the new vessels are regressed. Even histopathologically, they have been confirmed to.
Are you not going to use anti-VEGFs for tubes?
So that is what I'm saying. That that even the hyphema incidence is not very high even after trabeculectomy. So I would recommend a trabeculectomy first and preserving the tube for a future surgery, because even the tube is not going to work. The success rate is almost 65 to 70% after tube even.
So yes, the studies that you were,
ma'am, we can go to the
esteem
panel.
It's not a long
term. Yeah. Let us have an opinion of the panel. Yeah. Subhash sir, would you like to
as such, neovascular glaucoma is the difficult case to handle.
Yes,
so any procedure is going to have maybe not very good outcome in the due course of time. I think both of the procedures I have done some cases of trabeculectomy and they're still doing good. I haven't done any valve, but I think that valve in most of the literature says that valve, the longevity of the result of the valve is better than the trabeculectomy. So I would go according to that. But as Ritika has put up her words that this is also very useful, and you can always have second resurgery or revalve. And regarding the vitrectomy and other things, what Dr. Anindya has told that you will have scarred conjunctiva. But nowadays with 25 or even 27 gauge vitrectomy, there is no harm being done to the conjunctiva. So it's not a big issue now.
Okay, Kashyap sir, would you like to say a word?
I strongly believe that TRAB will not work, and Probably it depends on what kind of case you have. If it's a very advanced case, no matter what you do, the pressure is not decreased. Then there is no point of doing TRAB. Why after all open the eye? You can go for cyclodestruction procedures. In trabeculectomy, I feel that many times you can get even from a small hole, after you do a iridectomy, there could be expulsive hemorrhage as well. I don't know if people have witnessed it or not, but I have seen that during the trabeculectomy after iridectomy, I got expulsive hemorrhage. So trabeculectomy, by no means, I think it is logical.
Vibhuti sir, would you like to say something? Dr. Vibhuti, would you like to say something?
Yeah, as far as choosing a procedure is concerned, I believe that putting an implant, MF valve or any ceton implant is going to do better than a simple trabeculectomy. As far as skills and cost factor is concerned, that comes next to that. If we have to choose the best procedure, which should be done in a case of neovascular glaucoma, it should be a ceton implant.
Okay. Dr. Satyajit, Dr. Roongta sir, would you like to put in a word?
I think I would agree with Dr. Anuradha to control the retinal ischemia, first do PRP, anti-VEGF, vitrectomy, endolaser, and all those things. And then if it is not controlled, then I think still you can try and go do a trabeculectomy.
Dr. Jaswita, would you put in a word?
Nowadays, because of increased incidence and prevalence of diabetes and hypertension, we often come across cases of NVGs. Like if you compare with the earlier years, NVG cases are more nowadays. So having the availability of the valve, it's difficult. And also there occurs complication with the valves as well. Blockage of the valves, dysfunctioning of the valves. And if you take proper care while doing TRAB, like anti-VEGF a week or 10 days beforehand, or intracameral while doing surgeries, then doing TRAB has a good success rate if proper care is taken of. So I think TRAB is better than GDD.
Tube has its own complications, and I don't think it works beyond 2 years, and you see complications in tube even in test centers.
Leave apart the neovascular glaucoma, even simple glaucoma. There's a lot of failure of the bleb coming flat and all that. Why open the eye? Why open the eye for the TRAB?
Ma'am, one last word from Dolly ma'am. Dolly ma'am, please. Dolly ma'am.
Yes, I think valve implant is the in thing now. So we have to do all the anti-inflammatory procedures like anti-VEGF and leave the conjunctiva. There should be no inflammation. So putting in a valve is much advisable. It's the in thing now, and the hyphema also can be taken care of.
Above all, the underlying cause has to be treated aggressively.
Yes, that's true.
Thanks you for this consensus. Yeah.
Ma'am,
please go ahead.
It is for the cost. Then Dr. Ritika can refer the cases to Dr. Kashyap sir. He has assured to do the things free of cost.
Okay. So I didn't know this support is coming at some cost. I didn't know this. Thank you for bringing it out in the open. Okay. So this brings us to the end of this interesting debate session. And it has been enlightening for all of us. I really thank the panelists for their patience and for their input, which has been very valuable for each one of us who are not doing everything but would like to know about everything. And I think I would like another comment from Dr. Bharti, who has been very instrumental in having this debate here. Dr. Bharti, please. Unmute yourself, please.
And I really appreciate you, like you are with me in every decision of mine. Initially, there was but then later on, I was instrumental in organizing this debate. And I'm really thankful to all the esteemed panelists who have stayed till last. And
we have a third session coming up.
I think this is the one of its kind of annual conference. and it will be long remembered.